Coming to you live from Radio Cayman Studio.
For the record.
For the record. Hear from your government officials, independents, and the opposition on issues that matter to you. The record. Engage in an open dialogue between residents and lawmakers.
For the record.
The record. Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record. And now, your host, Orit Connor.
Good morning and welcome to For the Record. Today is Friday, the 15th day of September 2017. I want to thank you, our listening and our viewing audience, for allowing Radio Cayman and by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. Of course, For the Record is a show produced by the staff and management of Radio Cayman, and it is geared towards keeping you abreast of issues as they arise and play out on the local, regional, and international scene. I am your host. My two co-hosts, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Dr. Steve McField. You're welcome to join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 7:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. Our phone lines are always open. There is always someone waiting to take your calls. Normally, it is that beautiful voice of Ms. Susan Watson. In her absence, it's the voice of Mr. Paul Akai. You can call us on our toll-free number provided courtesy of Flow. That toll-free number is 1-800-534-8255. You can also call us on 949-8037 and 949. And of course, if you don't like to talk on the telephone, you can conveniently email us at For the Record. That is one word, For the Record, at candw.ky. Before I say good morning to my two co-hosts, it is also a pleasure to have in the studio with us this morning MLA Mr. Arden McLean, who represents the electoral district of East End in our Legislative Assembly. So without any further ado, I want to say good morning to my two co-hosts, as well as good morning to Mr. McField. Good morning, folks.
Good morning. Good morning to you, Mr. For the Record. And good morning to my co-host, Teresa Pitcairn, and good morning to the member for the Electoral District of East End, Mr. Arden McLean. Good morning. And good morning to all your listeners locally and to those who are listening to you abroad.
Okay. Ms. T.
Yes. Boy, you give me some homework to do. Yes, first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here with both you, with my good friend Arden and Dr. McField and yourself. And, you know, we never say good morning to Mr. Wilkes, so I'm going to say a special good morning to you because you do such a fantastic job with the camera work. I'd also like to say good morning to all of the listeners, whether they're on island or abroad. Thank you very much for having us.
Okay. One of these days we'll put Mr. Wilkes on the other end of the camera. Mr. McLean, good morning, sir. Welcome back.
Good morning, O.C., and good morning, Doc.
Good morning.
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning.
And good morning to the broader Cayman Islands and all listeners. It's been a while. I haven't been here. It must be a month or so.
Love to hear style.
And
Close to it, yeah.
And we have a schedule now.
Yes.
So you can, it'll be a while before I'm back because the other guys, it's a rotating schedule.
Yeah, we missed Chris the other day because I think there was a function that we had at one of the schools.
Well, yeah, what we're doing, what we started, something I wanted to do all my political career, which was for us to go into the schools and meet them in their assembly. You know, we were hoping we would do it all in 1 week because there are 5 schools on the eastern end of the island. And we're in a unique situation now where all the opposition is from the eastern end of the island. So we're visiting the schools on the eastern end first. We have one left in the first round, which is Savannah. That'll be done on the 26th. But Clifton Hunter is so big, they could only accommodate one class at a time. Because remember, they don't have the gymnasium which would hold all of those. The hall that they have doesn't. So we have to make 2 more trips back there. But it's quite enlightening for us to sit there and listen to those kids. The questions they throw at you are unbelievable. You would never think that those types of questions. For instance, at the East End School on Wednesday, a little girl says, I guess she's about 9, 10. She got up and she asked me, because whomever is from that district is the person leading the group that day. And she asked me, why is it that we treat the mentally ill in this country so terribly? And I was like, and she said, because she wants to be a psychologist when she grows up, but there's no facilities for them. So I had to tell her that it was good news that the government has committed to build a mental health facility. Unfortunately, no one told me that it was going East End. I had to hear it on the news. But that's the nature of this acrimonious thing called politics. Unfortunately, again, I had to hear it on the news. Nobody notified me. So I had no say in it. And it's evidently they are planning on putting it in there by the radar station. So I am, at least we're moving ahead with it. And then Edward explained to her about us not recognizing that mental health is a disease for so long. And there are other reasons too, and he explained all that to her, and she was all excited, and then you get the kids asking us how much money we make and why we make that money and the likes, and what does politics mean for us, and then yesterday in Bodden Town, a little girl was asked to give the vote of thanks to us. And she got up and she was so phenomenal for just being asked right there in the assembly. And that is what drives us when we get to these children and find out where they are. And, we told them about what our expectations are of them, what the country's expectations are, what their role will be in this country in years to come. Despite them being very young now, but it will certainly be in the evening of past our political evening, and in our lives will probably be in the evening as well. But they all took it in, they sat there, and it was a captive audience, I must tell you. And they conducted themselves so well. I was very proud of all those children in all those schools.
I'm just curious with the gender of the folks that asked those questions that were telling for you. And I'm wondering, if when they saw there were no women, if what, based on what you said that, who the attendees were, how they felt as young girls seeing these men. And I'm not saying that it's bad or not bad. I'm just saying who they saw as representing of them when they grew up as adults.
Well, there were an equal amount of men, boys and girls asking questions. Mm-hmm. The subject of women being in politics never did come up. But the little girl in Bodden Town yesterday said that as a result of us coming there, some of them will now think about going into politics. So, which is good. What was surprising to me, though, is that in East End, everybody knew me, but nobody knew any other member. Northside, the same thing. And wherever we went, it was basically the same thing. What that says to me is that we do not teach these things in school. our social agenda, our national agenda is not well spread throughout our schools. I'm not saying that's a fault of the teachers, but it's a concern of society. Should be a concern of society. So it has given us renewed efforts we think we need to have to continue this program, this project, and repeat it and continually go. You know, I was surprised that not many knew who the premier was of the country, and that distance away from politics with that generation must be concerning to all of us, because, you know, the more things change, the more they will remain the same if they're not educated on these matters and how it works. Of course, they would know me in East End because I used to do, with many of them, I did mock parliaments with all this 5th and 6th grades and that kind of stuff. And we had fun doing it, but and they have a grasp on it. But and Northside with Ezra as well. And, you know, the guys, Alvo, everybody, Mr. Anthony, everybody in Bantown knew him. You know, but it's a little concerning to me. And I guess we have our jobs cut out for us. All of us, not politicians only. I think this country has its job cut out for it. Parents must get their children involved. They're not too young to be involved in that aspect of this country.
Okay.
Well, I think it's more than parents. It's the government, and it's the opposition to insist that you teach civics in school. We come here and we talk a lot, but we don't do any backup services. We don't follow it through. I'm surprised that the students don't know, in a small country like Cayman Islands, which only has 60,000 people and 25,000 of them are on work permits, that they don't have to know you, but the other people should know who their representatives are, and they don't. Certainly when I was growing up and I was 13, 14 years old, I knew all the presidents of the United States and things like that, and who the monarchs were and things like that, and who the people were, because we were taught that in school. We were taught civics in school. We taught it in the Scouts, and it's a shame that we don't insist on this, and there can only be one reason why. And one reason why is because we do not want to enlighten our people. We do not want our people to be able to be intelligent enough to make decisions. And that brings me to the Constitutional Commission reviews, a call for advisory district councils.
We're going to talk about that as soon as we come back from this break, Dr.
Yes.
Macfield. As a matter of fact, I was going to introduce that subject. Yesterday was International Day of Democracy, and
Yes.
they chose that date to highlight the fact and seeking input on that. So we're going to talk more about that when we return after this commercial break. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record, where it is my pleasure to have in the studio with me this morning Mr. Arden McLean, the MLA in our Legislative Assembly, who represents the District of East End, Dr. Steve Macfield, and Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, my two co-hosts. Before we went to the commercial break, Dr. Macfield mentioned a call put out by the Constitutional Commission yesterday in recognizing International Day of Democracy. And they have pointed out Section 119 of our Constitution, the provisions there for advisory district councils. They are seeking input from the public in relation to the public's views on the establishment of advisory district councils. This provision in the Constitution is designed to give additional power and influence to the same persons who go into the voting booth on election day and elect their representatives. Now, I have heard stories of some members of the Legislative Assembly who are elected lamenting the fact that they are elected, and as a result of that, they don't feel that they should be influenced by any other person who's elected. That means the selection of the members of the advisory district councils who are. It is recommended that they be chosen through an electoral process. So that person is lamenting the fact that you have someone who you have elected on a national basis, then you have someone who you have elected on a local basis to serve an advisory district committee, and they don't want to be influenced, by them. To me, that is a very flawed argument to be using, because we see that happening all over the place. And the law limits what the advisory district councils can do as well. Dr. Macfield.
It's a false argument. It's not an elective council. That is a false argument. The Constitution is very clear. It says, subject to this Constitution, a law enacted by the legislature shall provide for the establishment, functions, and jurisdiction of councils of each electoral district to operate as advisory bodies to the elected members of the Legislative Assembly. Mm-hmm. It says nothing about the elected bodies.
But what the comment was talking about was the fact that how do you choose those members of the advisory council? And the law lays that out. The law would specify how it is
we
done.
already have the district council's law.
Yeah.
And the law lays how that should be.
Mm-hmm.
You should go to every district and you should ask people to nominate people from the audience or from the district and send them to the government, the cabinet, and recommend who will be the chairman, who will be the secretary, who will be the treasurer, and so forth of the council, and then they will be appointed by the cabinet to be district councillors.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with
elections. Okay.
It's a fallacy.
Mr. McLean?
But knowing the type of politics that is practiced in this acrimonious setting, the concerns that the now premier and I had when that law was done 2011, I think 2011, I think it was, yes, was that the law was so skewed towards the premier appointing these people, i.e. cabinet. You and the representative from the district was only going to be allowed to appoint one. And they were trying to get, I think it's 10 people would be on it, 8 or 10, as I recall the law. And all the others would be appointed by cabinet. And we know how we are capable of twisting the system. You could go and the district could go and nominate certain people, and the only ones that would be appointed by cabinet would certainly be those who they figure were on their side. Or, alternatively, you would find where the district would nominate 10, or whatever the case may be, and they're not suitable for the government of the day. Now, my grave concern about this entire thing is that when we did it, I was part of those negotiations. We were talking about electing people. We were of the view of electing people like midterm, but for 4 years. So that would be an overlap on any representative, like it's done elsewhere. We weren't talking about local government, because to do local government like we do elsewhere in our democracies and throughout the Commonwealth, what happened is that they are responsible for everything. So you set up a whole new set of bureaucracy. They're responsible for planning permission, the this, the what have you. So it was based on an advisory council. Now, we shot down what McKeever them did in 2011. This premier got elected in 2013. And he has done nothing about it, despite us calling for it.
Well, the reason why your government, the government you were in when Mr. McLaughlin as premier, what he said is that he was not supporting it because it was not an elective system.
None who go met our part of. Let's get that straight now.
It was not an elective system. And I said,
Not during my time.
It's very clear in the Constitution. It's advisory. If the framers of the Constitution wanted to be an elective system, they would have said so. And so advisory councils are not new to Cayman. In 1956, when Major Donald came here as a commissioner, he had an advisory council to advise him, consisting of Captain T.O., Ducan Marion, Mr. Ormond Panon, Mr. Willa Farrington, and all of those people to advise him, because he knew that in 2 or 3 years that the first constitution was going to come in, and he wanted to be advised of how to run the country.
Okay. Paul, are we ready for the news now? Folks, I want to remind you that you're listening to For the Record. I'm your host, Dorat Connor, in the studio with me, MLA Mr. Arden McLean, my two co-hosts, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Dr. Steve McField, and we're discussing advisory district councils. When we return, that conversation will continue. So please stay tuned. Don't change that dial. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me this morning, MLA Mr. Arden McLean. Of course, you know he represents the district of East End, but his representation goes way beyond East End. He's also the voice for many, many Caymanians who have concerns, needs, and issues in this country as well. Also with me, my two co-hosts, Dr. Steve McField, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. Before we went to the news, we were talking about the advisory district councils, and I just want to read section 4. Before I read section 4 of the advisory district councils law, I want to mention, and we talked about this, folks, before while we were listening to the news. First of all, credit must go to our current speaker, who was the leader of the opposition at that point in time, Honorable W. McKeever Bush, because without his insistence, we would have nothing in our Constitution in relation to advisory district councils.
But you should also add that he put it in the law in place in 2011.
Right.
Never
We're going to come to that. We're going to come to that too. Number 2, my position is, it is in section 119 of the Constitution. That could be for many reasons, but I do know for a fact that while he was pushing for the creation of advisory district councils, that on the last day of negotiations at Lancaster House was when it was finally agreed, and it was almost sort of a compromise, and it was finally agreed. Not a whole lot of in-depth discussion went in to advisory district councils, and it was agreed that we would create a law
just like
here
you did with
locally,
the single member constituency.
We would create it here in the Cayman Islands to suit our purposes, but he ensured that it was enshrined in our Constitution. So,
and I want to be balanced.
That's the history of that.
I want to be balanced
Sure.
with what you're saying.
Okay.
He was also the one who killed the police commission. I want everybody to know that.
Yeah, but we're not talking about the police commission.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Constitution negotiation.
Oh, but there's a lot to talk about that. There's a lot.
And as a result of that, in 2011, he commissioned myself and Leonard Dilbert to do the research, to pass on to the drafters, the legislative drafters, to constitute the law, and that's what we did.
Okay.
And the law was enacted. And when we went around the country explaining the law to the people, we got a lot of support from some of the people in West Bay and districts. But just let me go on to say to Miss Natalie Ucard, Oliver Watler, and Juan Carter, who are the members of the Constitutional Commission. They say that each electoral district, the commission is called for an advisory councils. The statement said reflects Section 119 of Cayman Islands 2009 Constitution, which refers to panels for each electoral district to operate advisory bodies to the elected members of the Legislative Assembly, offering the people of the Cayman Islands a chance to engage and influence the democratic process. I do not think that is going to happen because not one of the members, I do believe, once they get elected, wants to take advice from the people in their districts. And the only way that this is going to happen, if some citizens get together and bring an action in the Grand Court to force them to obey the Constitution. It's not going to happen otherwise.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if that's altogether so, because I'm a member sitting right here and I need to respond to that.
Okay.
Ezard has won in Northside.
It's not constitutional.
Absolutely, it's not. It's not. I have a committee in East End that I listen to. So we can't say that no one listens to people from their constituencies. Mm-hmm. The PPM, as far as I know, has a very robust executive body.
We're not talking about political.
Yeah, because this is now restricted to the 19 single.
I understand that, but they take input.
Yeah,
we take input from people.
So there is an ad hoc process
it.
In some way, right?
We need to formalize it.
Okay.
And I am hoping that I'll call within the next month to create one. But what my reluctance has been is that the Premier in his manifesto said that was going to be his priority, one of his priorities. And he is now saying that they don't have any time for it, because they were proposing in their manifesto that the district council be created and they give them a budget to do works within the communities. And so, if we're doing that, what is the purpose of us doing the other committees?
Mm-hmm. Now, Section 4, subsection 1 of the Advisory District Council's law says a council shall consist of the following members, all of whom shall be appointed by the governor in cabinet: a chairman, a vice chairman, a secretary, a treasurer, and not exceeding 6 others. So it can't be more than 6 other members, at least 2 of whom shall be subject to subsection 2 be recommended by the leader of the opposition appointed under Section 68 of the Constitution. And in making the appointments, the governor in cabinet shall be cognizant of recommendations made to him from within the electoral districts. Also, it is important to note that each council shall be subject to the direction of the relevant member.
Yes.
So this whole notion of someone being elected to dictate or to direct a member who has been elected to represent the electoral district in our legislative assembly, again, is a fallacy, and it is a myth, because section 3, subsection 4, in the law specifically states that each council shall be subject to the direction of the relevant member. With that, we have one caller. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen. I hope you all can hear me well.
Yes, Doc, we can hear you. Good morning.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Arden, I think you're falling on the wrong side of the cliff this morning, because you need to be taking the position of OC and Teresa and Steve on this. I would think.
So which position am I taking other than?
Well, a position that somehow, regardless of whether or not they're elected or whether or not they're appointed, at the end of the day, we're still going to have. We're still not going to be able to guarantee that they're going to be on anybody's side or any politician's side or any party side.
So you tell me what our law says. It says at least 2 in my constituency must be appointed by the leader.
At least people are appointed, and people have a possibility to participate regardless of by who they are appointed.
I don't know, Frank, if you think that I am against district councils. I am not.
I know you're not against district council, but what I'm saying is that as long as you make the argument or be hesitant because of the power which you believe that is given the government or those people who have the majority, that it will never happen. We have to let this thing happen because...
Is Steve who said it will never happen because they don't want to do it?
Well, it needs to happen, because I mean, what is happening in Cayman is that the number of politicians. Yeah, we have a lot of politicians, or we have a lot of elected members, but the kind of interaction, the dialogue, the ability for them to be able to be influenced by the people is not part of the structure. Our legislature and our government is completely removed or disconnected from the body, from the people. And it's that connection that this particular law seeks to assist, not to necessarily mean that I believe that it's going to be a solution to it, but the disconnect. And I've been there, and I know that you know that there's a disconnect. And the only time we have a connect is during an election campaign.
But Frank, I have supported it. I am willing and I'm ready. But I don't think it's fair that cabinet appoints those people other than on advice from the district.
Well, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying that you need to abandon right now the argument about fairness and think about the expediency part here.
But Frank, your argument is that we need participation by the public. And that's my argument as well. I am saying it must not be selective and directed by any politician. That's what I'm saying, whether it's me or someone else.
And I accept that. I understand that argument and I accept that. But let I say, since that is a barrier, let us move away from that and say that the good, the utility of this particular thing happening is greater than the negatives which will be created by them being appointed by those people who are dominant in the political process at the moment, because we know it is needed, really seriously. It's been discussed, and anything to break the gridlock right now would be progressive, and that's, I think, what I'm hearing the rest of them saying there this morning.
Well, if you have any influence to move it forward, I am willing and I'm ready. Let us and the government, the opposition and the government sit down, and we come up with a plan to put these things in place.
Yes,
because I have always been on board for it, but I want it structured properly where it is true representation and participation by the people on behalf of the people.
I'm going to ask you to leave us there because we have to go to a commercial break now. But when we return from that commercial break, I want to find out, since the Constitutional Commission is soliciting input from the public in that regard, I want to hear from our legal experts here on the show whether or not the Constitutional Commission has any legal standing in terms of seeking some recourse from the courts in terms of ensuring that this part of our Constitution is put into place. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're discussing our Constitution. We're discussing the Advisory District Council's law. We're discussing the inability to get these district councils up and running, except for those who are now up and running, but not necessarily in line with our Constitution. And extremely important tool for the electorate, for the people to be represented, to have their say, especially now that we have 19 single-member constituencies. Extremely important for that. The question that I raised earlier, that question is still posed to my two legal experts here, whether or not the Constitutional Commission has any legal standing in terms of seeking some redress from the courts in the government or the legislature's inability to enforce this section of our Constitution. Ms. Teresa, you want to tell us what
I was just going to say that
yes?
Under Section 118 of the Constitution.
Pull the mic.
Yes, sorry. Yeah. I don't think so, because under Section 118, which deals with the constitutional commissioners, it sets out what their functions are as members, which is to advise the government on questions concerning constitutional status and the development in the Cayman Islands, to publish reports, discussion papers, information papers, and other documents on constitutional matters affecting the Cayman Islands, to promote understanding and awareness of this Constitution and its values, and to exercise such other functions as may be prescribed by a law enacted by the legislature. So it does, I am sure, and I'm going to look for the other bit that I think allows someone or an entity to raise the matter judicially. But no, insofar as their functions and responsibilities are prescribed in the Constitution, the answer is no to your question, but I'm just looking for
Okay,
this other
we have
bit.
two callers. Let's go to the phone lines. First caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Fine, sir. Morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning to you, as your guests.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, OC, I want to make a statement or statements. And could you please not interfere or interrupt while I'm doing so?
Well, it depends on, what your statement consists of. If it's something that may be defamatory or something like that, I may have to interrupt.
Okay, it's not defamatory.
Okay.
Yes, I think it was the last time that Mr. Arden was on to the radio. I posed a question and I asked, what's your definition of a thief? Unfortunately, I didn't even get a response from UOC, and Mr. Arden, in the background, I heard him say that I could look into the dictionary. Well,
Oh dear.
Shelburne know that you could look into the dictionary. I just wanted an answer from the two of you, and that's not all I'm going to say. When Mr. Markfield mentioned, I think it was on Wednesday, that he sort of supported the French president for coming down to the French island or Park Island, Saint Martin. That it was some thing about how the English treating their colonies or overseas territories. I would like to remind Dr. Markfield that the position that Haiti is in right now, I mean, besides the fact that, Mother Nature with earthquakes took a turn on them several times, but the French, in all aspects, owe the Haitian people quite a lot. And saying that because history tells me that the French were the one that raped Haiti of all the natural resources, and the main situation that Haiti finds itself in right now has caused a good 90% through the French. So it's about time that they start to look after their possessions into the Caribbean. Thank you very much, and you all have a good day.
Thank you very much, caller. Well, I'm not going to give my definition of a thief because I will give the dictionary's definition of a thief. And one of those definitions is a person who steals, especially secretly or without open force, one guilty of theft or larceny. And there's a distinction made between a thief and a robber, because a robber can steal from you by the use of force or coercion as opposed to a thief. So
Well,
a thief is a person who steals.
If you want mine,
from
anybody who takes anything that don't
doesn't
belong to them.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yes.
That's
Precisely.
a thief.
I think we have another caller. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning, OC.
Good morning, sir.
Found
Mr.
it.
McLean, good morning to you.
Morning,
This is-
morning.
This is it here in the section 26.
Karen.
Yeah, they're all hearing you. Good morning.
Good morning, yes. All right, I know. That gentleman,
Section 26.
I want to say something about Haiti. My history told me, or tells me, that the French, Haiti was the jewel of the Caribbean. And they fought and wanted independence from the French. And the French told them, yes, you can get independent, but you have to pay us back the money that we built your island with. And that is what happened. I think up until today, they still have to pay the French government for them getting their independence from France, because apparently France invested billions of dollars into that island to make it the jewel of the Caribbean. That's what my history tells me. I'm not disputing what Mr. Lim said, Lynn, or what my friend. Anyway, getting back to the advisory district council, it was Mr. Arden. I heard you ask something about you were worried about it being implemented or enforced. That's what you are kind of concerned with whether it will be. But
No,
Section 26.
I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
That was
Sorry, maybe I
Mr.
misunderstood you.
Macfield who said that. Maybe you.
Oh, Mr. Macfield. All right.
Yes.
Sorry, sir. I take that back. Yeah, all right. Mr. Macfield said that he's kind of concerned that it mightn't be implemented or enforced. Now, isn't this a democratic ratified law? Wasn't it democratically put forth as a law, ratified as a law in our Constitution and also in our Assembly? Was it?
It is a directive of the Constitution. The Constitution is the highest law in the land. It's a directive. It's a directive to the government to bring this law into force, to bring this law into have these these district councils. It is not you may be or you might. It's a directive. There shall be.
Thank you. So to disregard that, then you would be breaking the law.
They are
You
breaking the
wouldn't
law.
compliant with, you wouldn't, the government or whoever wouldn't be compliant with the laws of the land, the highest law of the land, which we already saw two administrations displayed that behavior.
Yes, right.
They willfully would not implement that law.
Well, caller.
Yes, sir.
Caller. What has to happen is that the members of the electoral district is supposed to have meetings in his district with all his people and get recommendations from them who they think would be appointed to this council, and then take those names from the people who has said, I would like this one to be chairman, I would like this one to be secretary, and so forth, and then take that and send it to the government and say, I would like you to appoint these people to be advisory district council to me.
Perfect, because that's
It's very simple.
Way to do it.
It's very simple.
We are living in a democratic society.
It's very simple to me.
Dr. Steve. And
Yes.
I agree with you. That's how it should be done, democratically. Okay? But
I think one of the things we need to do is read the law, because the law also says that the leader of opposition can appoint two.
Well, sure.
Now, how do you?
Let's let the caller finish first, because I'm going to have to cut him off in about a minute and to go
I
to the
know
news.
that.
So
I know
because
that.
we have the mic
I
and we can
agree with
respond
you.
after.
I agree with you, Mr. McLean. That's your prerogative to do that, or whoever the leader of opposition is. Sure, no problem there. But he still has to go through the democratic process.
Exactly.
Which is he is appointing his, and it has to be accepted by the majority of the people in that district. But we need it. Let's get it on, get it done. That's what I have to say here today.
Thank you very much, caller.
It's been 8 years now. We've been waiting on it.
Thank you very much for
and
that,
have a
caller.
good day. Thank you again, OC, for listening.
Okay,
to me.
we're going to go to commercial break. When we return, then we will respond to the comments made by the caller as well. For the record, we're discussing advisory district councils. We want to shift gears, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to tease this topic because right here on Radio Cayman, on another talk show, sister talk show in the afternoon, I do recall hearing one of our councillors talking about road improvements in a particular area, I believe in the Red Bay area. And that councillor, and I stand to be corrected, but I listened carefully, and seemed to take credit for the fact that he had gotten accelerated work done since he had been a councillor and been a member of the Legislative Assembly, had gotten accelerated work done in an area where road repaving was going on, and that he would expect to have more works done. Not all of the roads in the area would be repaved, but he basically took credit for that. Now, if there's anybody who knows the potholes on the roads of the Cayman Islands better than I do, maybe someone from the National Roads Authority. But I ride roads of the Cayman Islands and I know all of the potholes. The only the only stretch of road that compared to the one that I'm going to talk about was the stretch of road from the old drive-in theater up to Midland Acres in the Peace Bay area. That has now been resurfaced, and it is in excellent condition. The next stretch of road from the entrance to the Shetty Hospital all the way up to the speed limit sign when you're entering East End by the little fish shack on the seaside. There's no worse stretch of road in the Cayman Islands than that. Now, I'm not blaming you, Mr. McLean. I'm just making an observation. That stretch of road has been in that condition now for years. But we have one councillor who has now taken some credit for getting work done after he has been in our Legislative Assembly since May of this year and have been a councillor for a few months as well. Any comments on that, sir?
Well, I mean, when I was minister, that road was scheduled to be resurfaced. And we remember the downturn in the economy in 2008, which stopped us from doing a lot of the capital projects. And then I left Cabinet in May 2009. By early 2010, I requested the government repave that road. And every year since, I have requested that. Up until Tuesday, July the 25th, 2017. I made a presentation to Cabinet about the things that are needed for the District of East End, which I've always done. This is the one that I in my cover letter, I said to them, as I have indicated, again, I appreciate the Premier extending the invitation to me to meet with you. However, based on the lack of response to my last 5 presentations to the previous government, I approached this first one to this Cabinet with a healthy dose of apprehension. As I have indicated in the past, this presentation should not be viewed as exhaustive of the needs of the people of East End. Rather, it should be recognized as some of the major infrastructural needs requiring attention and resolution. As other needs arise, I will endeavor to notify each minister with responsibility. Besides, it will include much of what I have presented previously because the many issues were not addressed over the last 4 years. I write as the facts. And under roads, the caption roads, I said, I again renew my request for the upgrade of the following roads. Seaview Road from the junction of Frankstown Road to Skipwith Way requires resurfacing. And that I have done since 2010. Now, it's obvious that the acrimonious nature of politics in a democracy within the Commonwealth means that, and what you said, coupled with what you said, means that the government looks out for its own. Now, when I went to, when we had the first day of cabinet, I did a speech in there, and the press only picked up on one part of it. And this was our first day in there, the 31st day of May.
You said cabinet, but L.A.
In L.A. And I said then, that the government must now unclench the fist of the campaign. And I still say that.
Okay.
I said, and I just want to read this paragraph. I also implore the government in their second term to seek a new way forward based on mutual respect and mutual interest and mutual respect for those who have not been elected on the PPM ticket, to respect the wishes of the people's choice, and unclench your fist of the election campaign. We are no longer at war. The people have spoken, and you are the government. You now have the responsibility to manage the affairs of this country. You're responsible for the distribution of the resources of this country. Do not try to punish your opponents by withholding the needs of the people submitted to the government. It has been done in the past. I hasten to remind you that a government is for the people, by the people. Punishing your opponents only affects the people. Know that your people will judge you on what you can build, not what you can destroy.
Okay. We have one caller. I'm going to interrupt you there, Mr. McLean. Let's go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Good morning to you, three musketeers.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, Emily, Arden, McLean, it's always good to hear him on the radio. Always good to hear all of our representatives, because we, the people, mostly can't get a chance for back and forth with them, except on the talk shows. Mr. Reese, I want to congratulate you very much. I watched that presentation that you did there. I just knew about it just by turning the government TV, and I saw it. It was excellent. I think it was August the 29th, I believe. Wonderful to listen to you. I didn't hear all of it. It's wonderful one. That tells the person that you are.
Thank
Who's
you.
out of the soil. The thing I want to ask, I have to kind of disagree with my friend Mr. Hill there. All the colonial powers used their colonies.
Yeah,
They
I was
used them
going
and
to,
they
but
were them forever.
I
yeah.
didn't want to get,
I didn't want to
into
get into that. Yeah,
British, the French,
Yeah.
the Dutch,
yeah.
and the Spanish, that's why they had them. It made political sense, it made economic sense, and it made sense in strategic importance and also. So they owe them all a debt, and they do hate their debt, the French do, they do. And when he said the jewel, during the early 50s, from the 1950s and early 60s, Haiti was the powerhouse of soccer
Exactly.
in the Caribbean. Bill, one of the greatest ballers ever. Haiti. And they played and beat many professional teams from the South America. So they were the Jews in that respect then. Poverty has descended on them. Serious natural consequences, calamities, and so forth. With this, I'm still at a loss trying to understand all this about the councillors.
I know that in the bigger islands like Jamaica, they have parish councils and they have elections, and it is political there because the political parties put up someone to run, and they're advisors, and they're much more powerful than just advisors. They actually can set the tone for the general election and so forth with their things. And then you have mayoral elections, and you have all sorts of things. But with our system, I imagine when you say councillors, it would be a set of councillors for each of the 19 districts, and not just a collective thing for the former district of West Bay, the former district of Georgetown, which is now 7 districts, and West Bay 4 and Bottom 4 and so forth.
Yeah, I think on previous occasions we clarified that would be the case.
It would be. So I had thought from the beginning that they would be elected. I still think they should be, but that's just my thought, my opinion. There are a lot of people with a lot more sense than I have. That they would be advising their representative. This was what I got, and I thought that was what it was to be. That because of it being single-member districts now, that he or she would need that council. For example, the minister and the speaker would need for his district and her district some advisory council, because to make decisions and so forth, and and then carry to cabinet, I guess, too, when the speaker has a chance to talk with cabinet or so forth. And because we have a very complicated system, I'm trying to explain that to Americans. Believe me, every day it's not easy. You tell them that the speaker really is nothing like the speaker in the United States, where he'll back.
Caller, I'm going to have to interrupt you there. We have to go to our 9 o'clock news, so I'm sorry that I have to cut into the middle of your conversation. And when we return, I'm going to give some directions to some of our callers who call in on a regular basis that will help them to sort of be able to time their conversation in such a way, and I'll give you the times that we take the commercial break, so that if you're talking and if you have access to a clock or something in front of you, you know that you're likely to be interrupted at some point in time to a commercial break. Please stay tuned. For the record, we'll be back immediately after headline news. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. In the studio with me, MLA Mr. Arden McLean, Dr. Steve Macfield, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn. For the benefit of our listening audience, it doesn't give me any pleasure to have to cut someone off in the middle of their conversation. We take commercial breaks every 15 minutes. So when we start at 7:30, we take one at 7:45, then we take one at 8 o'clock for the 8 o'clock news. That news goes on till about 8:50, and if it goes beyond that, we still take another break at 8:30, then one at 8:45, one at 9 o'clock, one at 9:15, and we're supposed to end at 9:30, which we rarely do. I usually go over and break the rules and end up going over. So if you're talking with us, if you're on the phone, kindly check your times, and if you're anywhere like a minute or so close to those 15-minute breaks, you may want to abbreviate what you have to say at that point in time, and that will avoid me having to interrupt what you're saying, because these commercial breaks, they are timed, they're computerized in such a way that if you lose a minute here, if you lose a minute there, then you have to try to make it up somehow. So I'm asking you to please work with me on that. This way I won't have to interrupt you. What I always say to myself, and what I also say to my co-hosts and any guests that we have in the studio, that we always have the mic in front of us. So whenever we go to a commercial break, when we come back, we have the mic that we can take over. So we want to give you, the callers, an opportunity to have your say and not interrupt what you're having to say unless it is absolutely necessary, because we will get an opportunity to address what you have said after we come back from the break, or whenever we get the mic in our hands at that point in time. So just a little bit of housekeeping that can make life easier, simpler for all of us, and also give you an opportunity to get your ideas, your points across as well. Now, Mr. McLean, in recognition that this really is the official opposition's day to be on here, right? And I know you asked me some of the, what are some of the things that we want to talk about. We want to ensure that you get to talk about some of the things that you want to talk about, as well. And I'd like to shift gears for a minute and talk about we're in the heights of the hurricane season. We have seen what has happened so far. We have, I saw a recent poll that was taken in one of our local newspapers about the readiness of the Cayman Islands for hurricanes, and it seemed as if not the majority of people didn't think that we were really fully ready in that regard. Have we become complacent after Hurricane Ivan, despite the fact that we have boosted or construction requirements and all of those things? Have we become complacent?
OC, we can only, as a human being in anything in life, be prepared for what we think would be eventualities. No one knows what they're going to be. You can only prepare to a certain extent. Where the complacency was in this country came from mine and your generation, OC. Here's how I explain that. The last major storm that devastated this country was 1932. The people of that time experienced it and understood they had to fortify their dwellings thereafter. Look at what they did. Most people don't even recognize it. They lifted it off the ground. You think Caymanians not smart? From way back then, they've been smart. What that does, it relieves the pressure of the water hitting your house. It dispels it under the floor. And that's why that generation did not have damage again from hurricane to that extent. Granted, we didn't have one as major as Ivan. I believe 59, we had one of in the 50s. We then came up, and in our infinite wisdom, we decided we were going to build closer to the sea. And we were going to do this, and we were going to do that, without ensuring because we hadn't experienced it. Along comes Ivan, and it was a wake-up call for this generation. Now, it will be 2-3 more generations before that wake-up call comes again, because we will experience it within our lifetime. We have, and we will again if that eventuality comes. But what we have done, I believe, is, and I like to say that when we see other countries, no one in particular, say that 10,000 homes were lost, they build a house. We build a home. We make sure it is fortified for those eventualities. I can't say we're going to make provisions for Arab one. How would you go over Category 5 or something like that? But we do it within our means. I believe we are well poised within that limitations that we have had. We are always going to get damage. What we need to be more concerned about is ensuring lives are saved, and protection of life. I believe the National Hurricane Preparedness Group has, with McCleary, they have done a good job of educating people. I believe the most important thing now is for people to take heed of all that information that they send out. The second thing is, I believe that people need to volunteer for, as wardens, I think they're calling them, within each constituency. That's what needs to happen, I believe. But by and large, the country's infrastructure is well prepared, I believe. One of the things I did when I was there, I made a policy decision that we were putting roads 5 feet above sea level, so that like the going the east-west arterial, because we know what happened with the one road we had. We couldn't get, it was breached there, and it was breached in east end, it was breached in breakers, it was breached in spots when that building came across the road, and it cut us off from the services. So the east-west arterial is built 5 feet above sea level, and then you could go 10, but you don't know what you're preparing for.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here because I
Okay.
know we don't have a lot of time, because and I have concerns now raised on some of the commentary I've been receiving since we've had the Hurricane Irma. And we know, for example, that the UK has spent some 32 million in trying to assist. And of that, 28 million has already been spent bringing people over and so on. We are a very charitable people. And, and I mean, this is something that we discussed on Wednesday when we were talking about charity beginning at home and helping out our neighbors. The concern that I am getting from many Caymanians in my walk is that folks are doing some reading about what is going on internationally, and there is a view that the United Kingdom has, the citizens living in the United Kingdom have a view of these offshore communities. They have a view about whether or not they want to continue to be associated with us and the ramifications of that. In fact, one of the articles that I was reading was, saying that, they want to get rid of, they don't really want to have a part of the offshore communities because of the historic reputation, rightly or wrongly. And what I'm hearing from locals is that, Ms. T, we don't mind being big-hearted, but we complain about unemployment. If folks are going to be coming over to Cayman, where are they going to get jobs from? If folks are going to be coming over to Cayman, our schools are crowded, where are they going to get education? How are they going to be educated? They were saying stuff like, housing. We have issues with foreclosures. We have issues now with social services and so on. Where are we going to find homes to accommodate folks that come over to us? They're talking about the prisoners. And, one of the things that we talk about on the show is the role of developing our own authority that can deal with crime and so on and so forth. And people talk about border control. In these circumstances, when you're bringing people over, what steps are being taken to ensure, for example, the folks that are coming here are not going to come with any kind of criminal baggage and so on? So Caymanians have a wide, they're asking a lot of tough questions. And whilst they're saying that, we want to be giving and caring, we have to also concern ourselves with how these changes are going to impact our lives. And that's a mouthful, I know, but that's what I'm hearing.
I take your point, and I take all Caymanians' point. Now, let me first of all say that I'm going to proffer an opinion on this, because the government of the day, in their humanitarian efforts to go down to these countries and help them, in most countries that's a bipartisan thing. The Premier has not reached out to us, despite us reaching out to him and offering our assistance. So there's no response to that. Al, the deputy leader, did, and the government has separated that. I don't know if they fear it's going to view us as getting credit from it, which is an unfortunate thing. That's sad, but be that as it may. I should point out that when he was in the last administration, when he was sending money to Dominica, the Premier called me for an opinion on it, and I supported his view. And I believe maybe I was being called in because of the relationship between Skerritt, Prime Minister Skerritt and I. Okay, so, but this time no one has contacted us, nothing, only what we see in the papers. So let me talk about us as a community, as a people. I know we have all these problems, the housing, the work, and what have you. That is a political will to ensure that gets done properly in the interest of Caymanians. We have been saying this forever. This situation we're in is is completely different from that. We must all be our brothers and sisters keepers.
But Caymanians understand that, Arden.
But what I want to say is, when I am going to tie that into, when Ivan hit us, 50% of our offshore business moved overseas, All the staff moved, and some jurisdiction assisted us with that to keep them there. Some were there for 6 months. So I suspect that this is a temporary thing as well, with people coming in to set up shop or whatever the case may be. I do not expect to see free movement like we had talked about before, that CARICOM had talked about. I do not expect to see free movement as a result of a devastation in these Caribbean. All those who are moving would have to be moving under the same conditions of the immigration law.
Okay,
so this is a temporary thing.
We have to take a commercial break. For the record, we'll be back shortly. Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We're in the last leg of the show this morning. I'm told that we have one caller, so let's quickly go to the phone lines. Caller, good morning. Welcome to For the Record.
Yes, good morning again.
Morning.
Morning again.
Mr. O.C., I don't mind you cutting me off, sir.
Sweet.
I've never been a clock watcher. I've always just called when it's time for you to shut me up.
No, but I hate to have to do it.
I don't mind at all.
Okay.
I hear the same concern. I heard Mr. Arden there, Emily Arden, answering. And I have the same concern as Mr. Reesa. Though, of course, these are the very high-end strata that is from the societies I am made to understand, coming here, high-end salary people. But maybe they'll stay on, but they'll still require, like you say, schooling for their children. They'll require things. I don't know what the government is getting, whether it can charge them fees or not or whatever. And I just wondered, Mr. Arden, I'll pose 3 questions to you. And I know these 2 of them are real bad words in to people. So if you mention it in the house, they might censor you or whatever.
Independence,
but
I'm sure, is one in tax.
Think about the possibility that we might have to implement some form of income tax. We have direct taxes now, and indirect, a pile of them. Some form to take care of, I listened to the PSC with the needs assessment unit, those 2 brilliant ladies, articulate and everything, makes me wonder why we're forced to go to what the next one is. And that's another one that you'll get run out of the house. You try to mention it. Possibility of talking to people about going independent. And also, the other one is this, and to me, this is a source of revenue, big time, the government is missing out on. Passing a gambling law, not just the half donkey one that we have where you can have raffles and so forth. This is gambling. But you can't have the numbers thing not being controlled by the government, some tax taken from the people who are vending. And it's big time money. You all know it's big time money being spent, millions a week. And government should get some form of tax out of it. I think I just wondered what you thought about those 3 questions: the income tax, the independence, talking to people. If it's even on some free, people are afraid to get up and talk in town hall maybe about those 2 things. And the third thing, of course, the gambling law. We'll have to have a referendum. But I just thought it's time for the government to take some, because we're going to need more revenue. We're going to need more revenue. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day to all of you.
Thank you very much, caller, for that. We have about 10 minutes left, so I want to give everybody an opportunity for to have some input again.
You're not going to make me.
Yeah, respond. Yes, yeah.
Oh, because
okay.
Next time I come on, then he got called back and said I didn't respond like the other one did.
Coming to you first.
Okay, I got an opinion on all 3 of them. that I have a position that I have stood by throughout my political years, all my life. But first of all, I want to say, Teresa, I understand these tough questions that my people have about another wave of immigration into the country, which may further disenfranchise them. I understand that. I feel it. I've been there. I know what it is. You know, like I say about the glory in the story. I know. I don't know what the government is doing, but it's my view that there should be some conditions attached to this wave of immigration for the purposes that it's being done.
But we don't know the numbers yet. We don't.
Right. But whatever it is, the government needs to attach some conditions on it about staying here and a period of to depart. Because that fulfills all our thing that we're our brothers keepers, but it's at a particular period, and that needs to happen. On the one about income tax, I don't know if has ever been overly excited about income tax, providing our people understand that it's consumer tax. Our regime is consumer tax, and we are going to have to do that in order to maintain the country. So if the consumer tax base that we have is suitable and it's sufficient, mind it puts a lot of stress on the economy of poorer people.
I think though people we used to have a vibrant middle class that could absorb, and that's not there anymore. So people want a sensible regime. I don't know what that regime is going to look like or feel like, but a regime where the elderly are taken care of, where you have proper medical care, etc.
Well, one of the things, and OC can attest to this, when I was minister, I called for a complete review of our tax regime, which was to look at it. Years, no taxes have been put on some of the services government provide. If we had done it over all those years, maybe 50 cents this year, maybe in 5 years, $1, though that is revenue, and it wouldn't put. But what we did was load up other stuff like sin tax and the this and the that, and that puts a stress on the economy really for the people, the very people, the middle class that needs to survive in this country. We need to have a complete review of it and see where we can put taxes on when we do. Right now, the government say they're not even increasing taxes, so that's good. Independent. I believe that we need to have that discussion. We need to have that discussion, and we need to have it pronto.
Quick.
Because we need to ensure that our people understand it. I was speaking to my young cousin the other night about independence, and he was talking about the things that was totally related to another country. And the only question I asked him, which sort of stopped him in his track, I said, you show me one country that has gone independent, and the cause, or look at all the countries that has gone to independence and look at all the causes why you would say that wasn't good for that country. And immediately he understood. Politicians destroy it. That's what happened. Independence is another status that we have for our own determination. That's all it is, really. Okay. And from that perspective, gambling law, I am not one position one way or the other on it. I've always said, if the people want gambling, we took it to a referendum. The majority speaks, and we like to say that, and the majority, we know what that is, 50% plus one. Independent, the same thing. Every country in this world that are territories have taken that question to the people. How many times have they not taken it? Bermuda has taken it at least 5 times the last 15 years.
And they may take it again.
And they may take it again. Everybody does that. I mean, Guadeloupe did it the other day. And Gibraltar has done it a number of times. We are just afraid of the outcome of it. And why are we afraid? You know why we're afraid? Because we want to last longer in the Legislative Assembly. And the more fear we can instill in people and support this behavior that independence is a bad thing, we stay in power.
Okay. Very quickly.
Yeah, I would advise us to keep an eye on how the UK is responding to what is happening in its Commonwealth territories, because so much of the literature has been involvement with the offshore community because of our quote-unquote tax haven history. The recent Attorney General for Anguilla had this to say about the
Solicitor General.
He was Attorney General. I'm sure he was the Attorney General. Jones. Well, at least that's how it's written, recorded. Okay. And he said the economist Richard Murphy has recently called for the donation of any aid from the United Kingdom to be conditional on reform of the territory's offshore tax haven status.
Yep. Very quickly, Dr. McField.
Well, I am so disappointed I'm disappointed and of the way that some of our people elected to the legislature behave. They do not. Some of them seem not to know the Constitution. They haven't read it, or if they have read it, they do not want to put it into force. And that really bothers me, because how you are talking about independence when the law that you have before you right now, the highest law in the land, there is no respect for it. And it seems to me that unless we respect the law and we put it into force and we do what the Constitution said that we have to do to build a democratic system, all of this talk is just idle talk, and it's not going to get us anywhere. For instance, we do not even have a district council after nearly 9 years of the Constitution being in place, and also Commission of Standards in Public Life. And it seems to me that what many politicians don't want, they do not want to interact with the people on an advisory basis after they have gotten elected. They believe that the seats in the Legislative Assembly belong to them personally, and it's not. We pay them good money to represent us. It is our seat in the Legislative Assembly. It's not theirs. And so when they're making decisions, they have to make decisions on our behalf and for us, and not for them personally. And that really bothers me, and it should bother the Caymanian people as well.
Okay, and I just want to add to that to say we've seen Mr. Ezra Miller put in place an advisory district council in the District of Northside. Yes, it may not be compliant with the legislation, but it is there. He has some persons to give him advice. You can set up your own ad hoc advisory district council if you want to hear that advice. It is established so that the voice of the people can be heard. So if you need to go outside of the legislation, and do it so that at least you're hearing what your constituencies have to say and what some of the recommendations that they would want to make to you. Does that change anything in terms of the way that you establish it, Mr. McLean? Does that change anything in terms of how you go about then transmitting the advice, the information that you have gotten from your constituencies to the government?
No, it doesn't. I believe that I have a method where I have a committee, plus I have meetings on a regular basis. And then I interact quite well with the people of East End, and I hear their voices. And so through those three mediums, it's obvious what is wrong. When you hear, a million Frenchmen can't be wrong. When you hear the majority of the people saying such and such. For instance, when I was going to oppose the dock being up there, I went round house to house personally with a petition. I explained to them what I was doing, and they all signed it. No. That is one of the better ways of doing it, because the council certainly will have to go and solicit that advice, that opinions, to be able to advise me as well. Now, my only fear of it is that we are going to rely on this council, and then the politician is not going to interact with the people. Some politician will say, well, that's their job to do it. And I think that's going to be a little unfair. I hope that doesn't happen.
Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman, and by extension For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles, as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I want to thank my guest this morning, MLA Mr. Arden McLean. I want to thank my two co-hosts, Ms. Teresa Pitcairn, Dr. Steve MacPhail. I want to remind all of us that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who is less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to Worthy Charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want. And there are many people who are in need right now, not only here in the Cayman Islands, but abroad as well. And in many instances in the Cayman Islands, when everyone was poor, the poor took care of the poor. We want to develop that same concept, that same thinking, and we don't want to dwell on the fact that, yes, we have our situation here in the Cayman Islands where some of the needs of our local people are not being addressed in the way that we would want them to be addressed, that they should be addressed. But that should not deter from the fact that there are brothers and sisters elsewhere who are suffering, and if they need shelter, temporary shelter, if they need temporary schooling, then we should extend that to them. We have seen in the papers now where the British Virgin Islands, the Premier, Dr. Orlando Smith, has said that they're going to relax the immigration rules in the BVI to a certain extent, because they need people to come in. They need specialist people in IT, people in construction, to help them to rebuild their country. So all of those things we want to take into consideration, and let us all have a big heart and support those who are less fortunate than we are. I say to you, have a great day, have a great weekend. We're expecting someone from the government to be on Monday. We have not yet been told who will be on, but we expect to have someone on from the government. If not, then me and my two co-hosts here, we will deal with that, and we will have our show, and we will probably criticize the government. We'll probably criticize the government. We'll probably criticize the government, but it's always good to have someone here who can, with a big, broad chest, who can take the criticism and handle the hard questions that we will give. So we will see what happens on Monday. Hopefully, we will have someone from the government on. I say to you, have a great weekend. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. John Sterling, Dwayne Ebanks at 12 noon for Talk today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
Informative, impartial, insightful.
This is your talk show.
1-800-534-8255. Your calls, your input. This is For the Record.